Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our webinar. Appreciate you showing up. We're really excited to be able to kick off what I think is going to be a nice series of webinars here. I'll get into the kind of the history of those more here in just a minute, but I want to thank everybody for showing up. Appreciate you being here, and just offer a couple of requests to you. First of all, these webinars, one of the fun things about these webinars is what happens in the chat. That happens kind of simultaneous with the actual webinar. And one of the things that helps bring energy to the chat is if you are willing to adjust your chat box so that everybody can see your comments. The way you have to do that is right above where you would type a message in the chat. It says to, and then there's a little drop down arrow. If that says anything besides to everyone, if it just says to hosts and panelists or to a panelist name, when you type in your comment, not everybody can see it. So if you're willing to make that adjustment, it helps bring a lot of energy to the chat. Adjust that to everyone. After you make that adjustment, feel free to type in a hello, good morning, good afternoon, whatever greetings you'd like. Light up the chat there. We are going to target going for about an hour today. We've got some information I'm really excited to share with you. My name's Jason Johnson. I'm going to be moderating here. I'm going to introduce our guests here. Actually, well, before I introduce them, let me give you, I know we have quite a few new people here. Let me give you just a brief kind of background on these webinars. So I represent the WhyTry organization. We're an organization that's been around for about 20 years. We're kind of experts in resilience and social emotional concepts. And we've been teaching those and assisting educators and mental health professionals for almost 2 decades now to deliver critical skills and sources of resilience to their clients and their kiddos. And we've had just had a blast doing it. We have kind of tools, resources, and an approach that accompanies it. Anyway, we started doing these webinars at the beginning of COVID as a way to stay in contact with our network and our community that we value so much. And we found out very quickly that these took on kind of a life of their own, and they've become really, I think, a great resource for people to be part of this community of kind of like-minded, passionate educators and mental health professionals that are always looking to share best practices and ideas and strategies and research with each other to try to help us all be as great as at within our positions here. So last year, things got a little bit crazy with our schedules on the road, and we had to kind of slim down the number of webinars that we did. We didn't do as many last year as we did in 2021, but we're really excited to kind of recommit to keeping a steady run of these here in 2023. And so we're kicking those off right now. We're going to have a good stream. We've got lots of great topics and guests that we've already got committed over the next about 2 months right now, and we're just gonna see if we can keep these moving because they've been a great resource for everybody. So that's kind of the background of where we're going with these. So now what I want to do is briefly introduce our title today, and then I'm going to introduce our panelists. The title that represents the topic we're going to address today is a school leadership approach to connecting with every student. It's one of the things that I think we've always specialized in. And to help out, we've got 2, I think, all-stars in this field here rounding out our panel. We've got, first of all, Corey Anderson. Corey has spent nearly 2 decades as an educator, beginning as a teacher, then as an administrator. Been an assistant principal at a middle school, served as a principal at 2 different elementary schools, pioneered and started one of 2 public STEM programs in the state of Utah, and helped consult with the State Office of Education on creating STEM standards for schools that would eventually be adopted by the STEM Action Center. Also, during his tenure as an elementary school, tenure as an elementary school principal, Corey oversaw behavior units led his school in implementing social emotional programs, STEM activities. Corey joined the WhyTry organization in 2019, where he serves as a trainer and the director of curriculum development after using its social and emotional tools for close to 10 years in his administrative duties. Corey, welcome and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the intro.
Next, we have Hans Magleby. Hans is one of the founders of the WhyTry organization, creator of the WhyTry program with Christian Moore that many of you know. Hans is a former teacher, has over 20 years of experience as a trainer, education consultant, specializing in student engagement and social emotional education. Hans frequently speaks to audiences of educators, administrators, counselors, and mental health professionals across the U.S., has a diverse background in technology, product development, and instructional design. Former art director for a video game company and technology entrepreneur, he has a passion for using technology to teach and engage youth, and has been dedicated to the growth and mission of WhyTry, developing practical tools to teach resilience and motivate youth. Hans, thank you. What a treat to have one of the founders of WhyTry on with us.
Good to be here. Thanks, Jace.
And then I will round out the panel. My name is Jason Johnson. I've been with the WhyTry organization for almost 8 years. My background is I'm a school psychologist, came over from public ed, as well as a resilience researcher, have been published on the topic of resilience. And so my role with WhyTry is I oversee training and research and get the opportunity to go out and do a lot of training and presenting on the road and virtually with people. And it's just been an absolute blessing in my life to be able to consult and become colleagues and friends with many of you around this topic that I get so passionate about, specifically the topic of resilience. So with this panel today, our goal is to share with you some ideas, strategies, and some resources specific to that concept that I referenced at the beginning of leadership, that leadership approach to connection and connecting with every student. I'm going to go ahead and start things off just with a very brief. So I mentioned earlier on, we've been around organizationally about 20 years, and our specialty has been helping people teach their students and their staff the skills and discover the sources of resilience through a lot of social emotional concepts. And we have kind of a specific thing that we call the WhyTry approach, which is kind of the foundation to everything that we do. The overview of this WhyTry approach that I'm going to share with you, the overview of the WhyTry approach is kind of this, and we do entire workshops on this, so you're getting a very, very abbreviated version. But in short, the WhyTry approach is a unique approach for how to teach the skills and sources of resilience, in which we focus on how to build relationships and how to make the learning relevant to your students' lives. We do this by following the model of what we call the new 3 R's. The new 3 R's are relationships plus relevance, which equals resilience. And to assist with that, we have kind of our unique set of resources, which includes toolkits, engaging content that we've developed, facilitator competencies that we teach as part of our approach, as well as workshops and training. That kind of rounds out the approach. In the process of doing this, we've become one of the leading voices on resilience. And so we regularly get invited to come out and present and share on this. And so what we're going to share today, in my opinion, is one of the most critical pieces towards helping students be resilient. It's one of the things I get most passionate about. And it's one of my very favorite things to discuss. And it's the first R in that new 3 R's. It's all about relationships. So to kick things off, I am curious, whenever I talk to people about relationships, I like to, actually, before I do that, I'm going to share just a couple data points with you. I was just reading in Ed Week the other day, and there was an article that came up on relationships in education. And, I rarely have anybody push back on me and tell me that relationships aren't important. I think that's a pretty established fact, but it's always interesting to see the data that backs it. So this came up in one of my, I guess, algorithms the other day and was sent to me. But Edwig cited these two pieces of research as far as benefits of relationships within education. A review of educational research analysis of 46 studies found that strong teacher-student relationships were associated in both the short and long term with improvements on practically every measure schools care about: higher student academic engagement, attendance, grades, fewer disruptive behaviors and suspensions, and lower school dropout rates. In addition to that, teachers benefit too. A study in the European Journal of Psychology of Education found that a teacher's relationships with students was the best predictor of how much the teacher experienced joy versus anxiety in class. So these relationships are critical to influencing the outcomes we want to happen within our school systems. They're also critical to our teacher and our staff satisfaction and joy as well, which matters tremendously. So one of the things I love to do whenever I start a discussion about relationships is I want to start with this question. Go ahead and raise your virtual hand. Actually, yeah, raise your virtual hand. You should be able to do that. Raise your virtual hand if you've ever had the following experience as an educator or mental health professional. Have you ever had the experience of having a student or a kiddo that would work for you when they wouldn't work for other grown-ups in the building? Anybody ever experienced that? It's one of my favorite experiences as a practitioner. And it's always been a thing that I've been very intrigued by. I'm seeing most of the hands go up. If you would be willing, would any of you be willing to share your secret in the chat? If you had to boil it down to like one little secret or piece of advice, how did you get a kiddo, or how do you get a kiddo to work for you when they may not want to work for other grown-ups in the building? This is like a big deal in education, right? Share your secret in the chat. Kindness, being real, care and respect, mutual respect, building relationships, connection. Yes. Empathy, trust, all of these things that tend to connect back to this concept of resilience, right? So when I started as a school psych, my first year, I experienced a pretty high level of discouragement. And this may sound a little naive, but one of the biggest sources of discouragement that I had my first year was I was frustrated and maybe even personally hurt a little bit that I wasn't connecting really effectively with the kiddos. Early on, I was mostly doing assessment, a ton of assessment to see if kiddos qualified for SPED accommodations, IEPs, et cetera. But I was also doing one-on-one counseling, and I would sit down with kiddos and they wouldn't try hard for me on their tests, or I would sit down in one-on-one sessions. And it was like, we just didn't connect well. And it was discouraging because I knew my heart was, or at least I believe my heart was pure. And I just thought if they would just give me a chance, I know I can help make a difference in these kiddos' lives. And it was like they had already made up their mind about me before I ever had a chance to really connect with them. And I'll save you the details, but there was this one singular moment where I was kind of like at my lowest point of discouragement my first year. And I was supposed to do an assessment with what had been described to me as the most difficult kiddo in this middle school that I was working at. And when I went to meet with them at the last minute, I did just kind of an experimental thing, kind of out of desperation, but I invited him to sit. I had this fancy leather chair I bought myself when I finished grad school. I invited him to sit in my leather chair, and I sat in this beat up metal chair in place of him. And he was so surprised that I invited him to sit in my nice chair. In fact, at first he kind of waved it off, and we went through this thing. I convinced him to take that chair. I'd take the beat up metal chair. And after that moment, it was like he changed. Everything changed. He became my first experience of having a kiddo that would work for me. I was literally the only grown-up in the building after that moment that he would respond to. His motivation around me was different than it was around other grown-ups. And I started to realize that there was this thing kind of built into the system, bigger and older than me, that made it really hard to have the relationships that I wanted to have with these kiddos. One of the things that really appealed to me about WhyTry when I ended up switching from public ed over to WhyTry was we had a very common approach to these relationships and the value of these relationships. And the way that we kind of summarize this and describe this within the world of WhyTry is through some language we describe. It's one of our facilitator competencies called surrendering the one-up. Here is a very brief description of what this concept is within our organization. It's what we teach, it's what we train to. Surrendering the one-up is this. It is surrendering the one-up relationship is a set of specific strategies that help educators build authentic, unconditional relationships that help all students feel understood, valued, and safe. When done effectively, surrendering the one-up relationship is the X factor for motivating all students to action and seeing their potential. Surrendering the one-up relationship is the key to motivating the difficult to reach student, and it involves the following: constantly and unconditionally communicating to the students that they have value and worth regardless of their successes, failures, or behaviors, creating greater equity in the relationships between the educator and the student, and acknowledging students as the expert in their own lives. So the core, the heartbeat of this WhyTry approach that we teach to people, we talk to people about, we present on, is truly built around the relationships that we build. And the purpose of those relationships is to help students feel different around us than they do when they're around perhaps other grown-ups in the system. As I mentioned, one of kind of my aha moments, and it was consistent with this concept, is that there are certain things built into the system that can make kiddos kind of naturally resistant to us as grownups. Maybe it's our title, maybe it's our height, maybe it's our age, maybe it's whatever thing that kind of separates us sometimes from the kiddos, and it can create this natural obstacle that gets in the way of building relationships. And so our goal is to still be able to maintain rules, boundaries, accountability, expectations, but to somehow help kiddos feel valued throughout the process of this. So the WhyTry approach to this has been to take a kind of a specific set of strategies that we can use with the kiddos, but also to take a specific approach with how we view ourselves as the educator, as the adult within this process. And we have a couple set of resources available to assist with this. We have a set of strategies and tools designed for adults to use with the kiddos. I think Hans will probably highlight that just a little bit. But then we also have this leadership toolkit that's kind of unique to us that I'm going to have Corey show here in just a minute. And the leadership toolkit is kind of this unique set of tools for leaders and the adults within the system to explore within themselves and within their organizations to help lead towards best practices, but also to self-reflect kind of towards their own position within these relationships. The last thing I'm going to throw out there in regards to relationships before I throw to Corey is just a thank you in advance for the authenticity and the vulnerability that you all bring to this virtual discussion, because it does require a little bit of vulnerability to examine our approach to relationships. And this is one of the things we've literally spent years working on both internally and with organizations. And it truly has, in my opinion, been one of the biggest difference makers when it comes to motivating unmotivated students and also creating kind of a cultural change within schools and organizations. Is really fun, really powerful stuff. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Corey now and let Corey share some of these ideas from this leadership toolkit that are kind of fun and kind of transformational for how we can kind of view our own position within these relationships. Corey.
Awesome. My turn. Yeah, excited to be here. So hopefully I'm sharing a screen correctly with you guys.
You are.
Everyone see that? Fantastic. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and discuss this as well. Great job, Jason, there. The only thing I'd add, and part of the reason that we spearhead these webinars and some of the resources we brought together is that in training thousands of educators on how to work with students, and we do this deep dive into surrendering the one up and relationships. One of the most common remarks that I get near the end of that section of our training is, "Oh man, how I love this. It resonates with me. How do I share this with all of my colleagues? Like, how do we get the entire school to see this and believe in this," and that type of thing. And so that really has led to some development on our part to try to provide tools for a leadership team to be able to almost lead out with that discussion and explore that. So like Jason said, I want to just share a few examples of some of the things that we do from our own workshops in exploring this idea of relationships and how to dive a little deeper. So the first activity I'm going to do is wrong key. Let me see here. I got to warn you that I'd hit stop share. This is the first time I have used whiteboards on a Zoom. So we're just going to cross our fingers that this works okay. Here we go. So hopefully on your end of things, you can see this screen. And hopefully it's not too small. I'm hoping here, but if not, let us know in the chat window. You will see in the whiteboard in front of you an activity that we like to do, and it explores the shifts in perspective that takes place as we begin to understand at a deeper level what happens when we build relationships, specifically when we surrender the one up. And so on the left side of the screen, you can see this column in red, this section in red, and all of those statements are some of the beliefs that we have about relationships, many times even when we begin in education. And as we learn more about it, as we surrender the one up, a lot of times those perspectives, they start to shift and transform into the blue column. So the blue column represents where those beliefs lead as we dive deeper and we learn to surrender the one up and other strategies towards building relationships. So my activity for you is this. Every single statement on the left side pairs up with a statement on the right side. And I want you to look through those and try, yeah, time for the readers, try to pair up which ones go with each other. And you will notice on the left side, each one has a letter of the alphabet. And on the right side, there is a number. So if you think you see one that pair up and go together, I want you to share in the chat window. You might say, D4 or J7, whichever ones you think pair up. Go ahead and share in the chat window. And I'm going to take a look at them, and we're going to look at what these statements, what they create.
You can zoom in on that too. If it's really small, you can zoom in on your view.
On your view. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Melissa.
There we go. Here comes
Cynthia, awesome. Yeah, so it's kind of like a matching game.
Excellent. Yeah, so I see some coming in. You see what Melissa, Cynthia, and Poto have done. I'm going to take some of these. Let's take a look. So Melissa said A, 10. So one of these shifts in perspectives regarding relationships is to see the potential in every student. That's where we begin, but then it leads to helping every student recognize their own potential. So our own perspective is, it's important for me to see the potential in every student, but as I learn to surrender the one up, I recognize what's even more important is for me to help every student recognize their own potential. Does that kind of make sense how this works? So the other thing I'm going to challenge you to do, and I appreciate those who are being vulnerable and giving this a go. The other thing I want you to do, everyone here, is look for any of these that resonates with you. At the end of this activity, I'm going to ask anybody who would like to share which one resonates with them and maybe why. Okay, so be prepared for that. That is coming. So A10 is a match, by the way. Well done, Melissa. I'm going to kind of group these up. We'll see how much space I actually have. Yeah. Another one. Let's take a look. So I'm seeing some numbers here. I got to scroll up to check them all out. So I see an F1. Let's take a look. F1. So you start out helping students feel valued, right? That's kind of an initial belief. And then the partner to that statement is to help every student feel valued regardless of success, failures, or behaviors. Do you see how that's kind of taking it to a deeper level and what that might represent? Okay, we'll take a couple more. G11 I see. So here's another one. Telling students how they should feel about their lives, experiences, and emotions, acknowledging students as the experts on themselves. Nice. Definitely. There's definitely a transition there. Again, you guys are going to be looking for some of these that you could speak to and that resonates with you. Okay, here's a couple more. B9, Nina is sharing that one. Use your authority to maintain control, sharing power and authority to create equitable relationships. Interesting. In many ways, that's actually at the heart of surrendering the one up. So excellent. That's a match. I wish I could give out like candy bars or points or something. You guys are doing fantastic with this. Stickers. Anybody mail these guys stickers? Nice job. Let's see what else. H4 I see there. Let's do this one. H4, being guarded with students, being vulnerable with students. So a lot of times, if we can look at it like, I've got to keep my boundary, and we become very guarded. But in reality, to build relationships, we have to get to a point where we learn to be vulnerable. So nice. Excellent. I like it. K8, prioritize the academic goals and objectives to prioritizing students' overall well-being. Excellent. Right on, Suzanne. I like it. C6, I'm just kind of picking them up as they come. Jennifer, C6, build compliance through relationships to building community through relationships. I love it, right? That's kind of driving at the purpose of why we are doing this. Good stuff. A
They're
couple
good at
more
this.
here. Yeah, I mean, they're nailing this. I don't even have to say, oh, nice try. Just kidding. J3, use consequences to motivate. Instead, learn to leverage your relationship to motivate. And when you can get to that point, it makes such a huge difference, right? A lot of times we try to use consequences to sometimes get the kids to think twice, or in other words, sometimes to behave the way we want them to behave. But in reality, if we build the right relationships, we can use those as a way to motivation in that sense. I5, telling students how things will run, to collaborating with students on how things will run. Awesome stuff, guys. And just a couple more here. I'll finish them off. Viewing relationship building as a two-way street to taking on the responsibility of developing that relationship. And then the last one here is, a lot of times we start off evaluating my effectiveness based on the relationship with some students, right? Where I start thinking, yeah, I build good relationships, and I immediately think of some of the students that I've built relationships with. But you know what? I've got to start recognizing that every single student that I work with, they have a perception of our relationship. I need to learn to evaluate my individual relationships with all students. So all of these things you see here, these are big ideas that, you don't necessarily just make that shift overnight, but we've learned that as you explore the importance of relationships, and as you learn to surrender the one up and do some of the other things that we do, that these shifts start to take place. So I want to show you that document again, and let me switch my share screen. So I'm going to bring that document up that you just put together. This is what it looks like here. So I'm sharing again. You can see on the left side, We've got a document here. That left side shows all the beginnings to those statements. The right side, is where those lead towards. I have some processing questions that I want you to think about. We don't have a lot of time, especially in a huge a webinar like this, but even if you don't have a chance to share in the chat window, I challenge you to think about this, even for yourself. So at the very least, can you pick out one row that stands out to you and why? I would love to hear, especially the why. Anthony, you're saying that the H4, which ironically, I now don't have H4 in front of me. I actually could probably do this, Amy. From being guarded with students to being vulnerable with students, Anthony, I'm assuming because the letters are following A to A all the way down. So good one. Anybody else? Does any row here stand out to you? Does it resonate with you, and why? And I know that might take a little bit to type, so we'll give you 30 seconds to maybe put an answer in the chat window if you'd like. And I can get a drink of water. Right, Amy? Gosh, as adults, we have so much life experience. It's really easy to get in there and to hear them even share or confide or talk. And then for us to return with kind of telling them what they should think or feel about things. And we don't even realize we're doing it, Amy, but I love that you brought that up. And I know that a lot of you are actually really good at that one, because at the start of today's training, when Jason asked you, what did you do, with that student to win them over, a lot of you said, listen. And when we listen and just listen and listen, that is a great way of helping them feel validated and that they are experts in what they're telling you. So I love it. Great answers coming in there, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on. Some other things here. Obviously, we don't have a lot of time to dive into this, but these are some of the other questions that as we deliver workshops, especially on this idea here, we go through the process with our colleagues of exploring these questions, because that's really what allows us to reflect and start to realize, how important some of these things are. Do you have experiences that support this shift in mindset? It's important to ask, do you have any questions about any of these roles that maybe you don't understand, or maybe you don't even agree with at this point? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's important to have these types of dialogues with our colleagues. And by the way, feel free in the chat window if you do have any questions. We'd love to, even if I don't get to it right now, you could send us the question. I'd be happy to respond if it was like, oh, actually, I really want to know the answer to this.
Yeah, we're also going to be putting up our email addresses at the end. If any of you have any questions you want to direct specifically to us, we'll make sure that you can easily get a hold of us after.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm just going to throw the rest of these up. You can see there's some great processing questions. This is all part of our process that a leadership team should take in building the importance of relationships with all of their colleagues, right? And as you deliver workshops that include activities like this, it creates almost this pool of shared understanding and learning, which then allows you to take that concept to new places, right? And continue to develop it as a learning community. So I want to shift gears here. So this is one of our activities. I also want to shift gears here and use kind of a different resource, one that is commonly spread throughout everything we do, and that is the use of video. So we love to use videos to tell story, to develop understanding, and I want to use a video now that will, it's probably going to introduce a new concept for a lot of you. There's probably a good number of you that maybe it's not so new. Either way, it is a great example of how we also want to bring in new ideas to support even something as fundamental as relationships, so that we can continue to discover our things about it. So we're going to watch a video that's a part of one of our workshops called It's All About the Johari Window. It's about 5.5 minutes long. You can't help but watch it and start to internalize it and think about it. So watch the video, and then we'll process and talk a little bit about what this has to do with this stuff. Here we go.
Megan.
I had to switch mine to share computer sound. I'm restarting that just to make sure we're good. Okay, there we go.
Meet Megan. Megan is a 6th grade teacher at an urban middle school. She is hardworking, patient, good at analyzing data, a problem solver, and a literacy leader. At least that's how Megan would describe herself. Megan's students would describe her as passionate, smart, a good writer, but also too strict and not fun. Would Megan benefit from receiving feedback on both her positive and negative behaviors? Would it benefit Megan in her professional career? Would it allow her to make better relationships with her students and in turn help them to achieve more in her class? We would like to introduce you to the Johari window model to help us evaluate our relationships with students through it. We believe it can be a useful tool to help us be more self-aware. The Johari window is a psychological tool we use to analyze behavior as well as our relationships with others through feedback and disclosure. It was developed by psychologists Joseph Luft and Harry Ingham while researching group dynamics at UCLA. It's a simple tool for developing self-awareness, personal development, communication, interpersonal relationships, group dynamics, and team development. The model can be used to analyze all of our relationships, but today we want to specifically focus on our relationships with students. The model consists of 4 quadrants. The upper left quadrant is called the open area. This represents information you know about yourself and that your students know about you as well. Megan loves literature and loves to write. She works hard to prepare lessons on literature for her students. This is known to her and to her students. The upper right quadrant is known as the blind area. This area represents information your students know about you, but you don't know about yourself. Megan doesn't realize when she does the same routine every day for every lesson, it bores her students. When they put their head down on their desks, her voice gets very loud and very agitated. It even causes her most attentive students to feel uncomfortable around her and a little intimidated. The lower left quadrant is considered to be the hidden area. This area represents the things you know about yourself, but you don't make known to your students. Megan grew up on the coast and used to surf in high school. She also has been working on a novel that she hopes to one day publish. If Megan doesn't share this with her students, then it is part of her hidden area. The lower right quadrant is the unknown area. This represents the area of information that no one knows about you, including yourself. Information that no one knows about Megan, including herself, could be Megan could have an undiscovered talent for something like playing an instrument. Or Megan may have unknown insecurities and fears that manifest when disciplining within her classroom. If neither Megan nor her students know these things about her, then it is part of her unknown area. The ultimate goal of the Johari window is to enlarge the open area through feedback and disclosure. The more people know about themselves and others, the more productive and effective they will be in creating relationships with students. There are several ways to increase your open area. First, share information about yourself with your students. Choose what is appropriate for your students to know and find ways to help them learn more about you. The more they know about you, the more they can relate or see themselves in you as well. This includes interests, passions, and even struggles or weaknesses. If Megan shares stories from high school when she used to surf and even tells them about her book she is writing, she will decrease that hidden area and gives more students an opportunity to make connections with her. Likewise, students will feel more comfortable sharing about their own lives, passions, and interests, and perhaps even find common ground. Second, request feedback from others and be open to what is shared with you. When you solicit feedback from your students about how you run your class, the lessons you prepare, and how your students feel in class, you gain valuable information that can be used to create a safer environment for authentic relationships to be built. If Megan learns that students are genuinely bored because the lessons feel the same every single day, or if Megan learns that when she is angry that students are bored and her raised voice and demeanor make students feel uncomfortable, she would probably make steps to correct that. Her blind area would decrease and her open area would become larger.
Awesome. So you guys get the general idea there. Great idea. Johari window, is used to analyze relationships and teams, in many different areas, but specifically with education, when you look at it through that framework, there's a lot of interesting things there and ways that you can personalize it. Some of the processing questions we would do, besides giving out a copy of this, would then to kind of go through it, right? What are some of your takeaways? And then start to even apply it to yourself, which, by the way, we're not going to go through all of these, but I do want to ask you that very first question. Anybody in the chat window, did you have any takeaways from that video? Did anything resonate with you? I would love to hear about it. That would be great. Diane, while some of you may be putting in an answer or two there, I want to refer back to that point you brought up, Diane, about just the barrier of time and how educators, they may even feel like they don't have time to build relationships and do what needs to be done to make that happen. And as I saw that question came up, what we're really trying to address here is a lot of the times I think educators, they're unsure of themselves and they're not sure how to build those relationships. And so, it's really easy to pass off that I just don't have time for this, or I've got to do that, because they're not sure how to go about it. And so that's why this conversation is so important. That's why surrendering the one up is so important, is because we really are trying to dig into the how. And as we start to dig into that, it actually creates space for vulnerability and recognizing, I'm actually still struggling with some of my students, and it's okay. It's not easy, right? And if that's the conversation we're having as a community, then there's room for growth. Anyway, that was just my 2 cents on it, but hopefully that video, was kind of interesting to you. Just another resource we use. So I want to show one more. It's really quick, and it's powerful. It's fantastic. And so here I go with this one. The reason I'm showing you this one is that while the Johari window in this video is something that is more often than not bringing a new idea into the conversation to analyze relationships, it's also very important to build on things that you guys are probably already talking about in your organizations. So an example of that would be, trauma-informed classrooms and practice is a big deal. And so if we can build on that as we dig into this, it can be very beneficial. So for example, here's a minute-long video that would be an example. It's in our workshops that we would use to then dig deep into surrendering the one up and what this looks like and how to do this.
The emotional effects of childhood trauma are well known, but new scientific research reveals that a child's positive and negative experiences can shape and reshape the brain. Research suggests that the more a child witnesses violence, the more neural connections are created in regions of the brain that involve fear, anxiety, and impulsiveness, while fewer are created in regions that involve reasoning, planning, and behavioral control. The good news is the young brain is malleable or plastic, and fostering stable, supportive relationships can prevent or help reverse this damage, resulting in lifelong benefits for the child's learning, behavior, and overall health. So how can you help a child in your life? Just remember these 5 healing gestures. Celebrate them with a compliment or by applauding their efforts. Comfort them by staying calm and patient. Listen to them and show an interest in their passions. Collaborate with them by asking their opinions. And inspire them with new ideas. With these everyday gestures, you can help a child look forward to a bright future.
So this video, a lot we can take from this, right? And this is an example of a prompt I would give, or we would give to, a group of educators after watching this video to really kind of dig into. So the video brought up 5 things that we should be doing with youth that have experienced, trauma, especially significant trauma to the type that it alluded to in this video. And that is to celebrate them, to comfort them by staying calm and patient, to listen to them and show an interest in their passions, collaborate with them, and inspire them with new ideas. And so if I, as a team of teachers, if we as a team of educators or teachers or whatever capacity were to get together and talk about, okay, so what does this currently look like in our schools, or what am I doing to do these things, that can lead to some great outcomes and ideas of how to build relationships, because that's really what we're driving to. Very rarely is somebody going to argue with the importance of relationships. It really comes down to learning about, how do I do this? And so as much as we can lead each other down that road of answering that question, I think the more beneficial we can be to each other in helping each other develop this. So in terms of, these are my last few thoughts, and that is a horrible, as I'm looking at this page, there's tons of words there. I apologize. Oh, well, I'm still learning. I don't do these a lot. I'm going to pass this off to Hans in a moment, but here's a couple of ideas for how to move forward. Number 1, build a shared understanding of not just the importance, but also learning how to build relationships. And that shared understanding is important, because if our only approach is to go in and say, you guys, you got to build relationships and this is how you do it, that there's just there's not a safe zone there for colleagues to really dig into this. And just like students need safety to be able to learn, educators and adults need safety to learn as well. So provide time and resources for continuing to explore what this looks like. And what I mean by time and resources is, if a leadership team wants to lead out on this, then there's got to be time to think about it, put it into practice, come back and discuss and explore a little bit more. And it shouldn't just be a one-shot, hey, we're going to talk about the importance of relationships on August 11th, and we're good to go, right? Like, this is a big concept. It really, really is. And it affects things in such a dramatic way. In my opinion, it's worth it. It is important to introduce new ideas and concepts regarding relationships. As Jason explained, we push the surrendering the one up. We know it's probably the most important thing we can do to starting to build relationships with our students. Use a variety of learning tools. We use videos and activities, readings and research. We share and understand experiences. Like I just did here, you want to build on other educational principles. And then perhaps one of the most important bullet points that I want to kind of highlight is this. And it is, do this as a leadership team. If only one person is trying to move this forward in an entire organization, it becomes overwhelming and very difficult to sustain. You can do it in your own classroom, your own office space, your own section, but to affect the entire community can be difficult if there's not a team trying to build this and push it forward. So with that in mind, one of the biggest and most difficult hurdles with that is time, right? Like, as a team, how do we have so much else going on? How do we build workshops and bring together all these resources? So I'm going to turn the time over to Hans to kind of take it down that road and to finish off our webinar.
Thanks, Corey. Great resources there. And I just wanted to make a quick comment on, I've just been following the chat and the things that you've been saying, and there are so many great comments that you guys are sharing with us that we really appreciate all your input. And it's a lot. I know for you guys kind of following the chat, that contributes to each other. Your experience in some of these webinars, just kind of seeing what everyone else is saying. We obviously, with as many people on, can't hit every single one there, but a lot of you have questions about some of these things that we're sharing, and I'm going to address that. We have some things we'll want to leave you with today that you can kind of take away. as a resource. So let me share just a little bit, kind of continuing the conversation of what Corey was just discussing with you. So kind of as a result of some of those challenges, the challenge of time that Corey was talking about, also the challenge of, trying to do this individually, we've created a resource and kind of combined with some training and supports to help address some of the needs that we've been seeing as we've been using our programs. WhyTry, we have another program called Resilience for Youth, for those of you that aren't familiar with who we are. But I wanted to just kind of give you a little framework of sort of what we've observed over the last 20 years. So we do training. Typically, we're training individuals and teams on our WhyTry program, Toolkit, and curriculum. And then, like Jason described, we have our WhyTry Approach, which is sort of the facilitators' competencies that they apply to deliver the program and the curriculum that we have, or to use our tools. And at the heart of that approach is that concept of relationships, and surrendering the one-up relationship is a series of strategies that we have to try and put that into some practical way that we can be intentional at trying to improve our ability to create those relationships. And so what happens often is that following a training, these people that are equipped with both our approach and our toolkit, they usually are school counselors or social workers, teachers, various different types of backgrounds that will be applying this, even combined with academic classes or subjects. And then school psychologists and some of the school mental health team as well are often the most common demographics that we're teaching and training in our program. And then they go back to their school, and in their school, they begin using the program either as a toolkit, or they might run small groups or run classes using WhyTry. And it's very common in training. They'll recognize, and they say it to us in training, that in our training, that concept of the approach, and especially surrendering the one up, is something they wish every teacher in their school, the whole school staff, could understand and know a little bit more about. And we've equipped them with a series of strategies and resources in the WhyTry program that they take. And so they'll often go to their administrator, have a discussion about this, and share it with the administrator. And the administrators will see some excitement, some possibilities of what we can do with that, and they'll solicit their help. And it always impresses me how there are different forms of leadership in a school. I have Jason on and Corey on. I've recruited both of those guys to come work with our organization because I've had experience with them outside of working here with WhyTry. Corey was actually the principal, so he was an administrator in my children's elementary school. And I was so impressed with his leadership and the things that he was doing in his school. And he had, not in any way connected to me, had become interested in WhyTry and used it as an administrator. And then Jason, in a similar fashion, as a school psychologist who had been studying resilience and had used our materials. And, Jason, as a school psychologist, often is providing support to his administrator, and in some capacity is leading out within the school. And we often would have people that would take our program, our resources, and use them in a school setting. And that one person, would have a big impact. So, for example, Jason would have opportunities because his administrator would request that he support the staff. Sometimes he would lead a workshop with staff and explain to them some of these concepts and try and get the staff to have some buy-in to it, and hopefully create a culture that is more of a culture of caring in the school, where we have sort of an intentional focus on trying to establish these relationships and create that support. Oftentimes that person that's the individual that we trained, they become sort of a cheerleader and someone who has this influence on the school or the organization, to the point that they perpetually keep focusing on this in their own work and it kind of spills over into their colleagues and into the staff, and usually continues to encourage the administrators who, as Corey said, are pressed for time and trying to manage so many different things. Sometimes this isn't the area that they have time to lead out on, but they love that they have someone that in an informal way in the school is helping to lead out on this and keep it going. And we see that over and over, but then the frustration comes in both for us organizationally, and I think even at the school level, where that advocate, that cheerleader, the person that is leading the charge switches jobs, moves to a different school or changes positions, or the administrator that was kind of leading out on that switches jobs and changes to a different situation. And it leaves the school with sort of a void of that leadership and that focus and that effort. And often we see it kind of disappear. And so what can we do about that? You know, that was kind of the problem that we were trying to solve. How can we improve a situation like that and keep it sort of delivered in a way that's maybe more effective and that is more sustainable over time? And so, you know, taking the approach of, instead of just having one person, having a whole team approach, you know, where your team, your leadership team in the school can all get on the same page and all understand sort of the vision of what we're trying to do to create a caring, supportive environment in our school where relationships are at the center and the importance of relationships are at the center. We know the impact that that has, as Jason shared, even some of that new research that we were seeing in the Education Week article that he shared, of how it's impacting students and then how it's impacting staff. I think post-pandemic, we've seen just this incredible shift that's happened, where we all seem to recognize even more now how to form those relationships why those relationships are so important, but we don't hear a lot of discussion about how to do it. And so one of the things that we're trying to do in kind of creating a solution here, and that we've rolled out, this is a new product for us, or a new resource for us, is our Transformational Leader Administrators Toolkit, which is a series of pre-built workshops to kind of help solve that challenge of time. How do we do something that can create an emphasis on this for our staff, for our team, and do it in a way that is deliverable over and over, in multiple, not just one and done, but multiple points where we can have conversations about this. And so we have a series of pre-built workshops, kind of a first workshop that is an introduction to this concept of strengthening the one-up relationship, along with 3 follow-up workshops for school leadership teams to take and develop and share. We have a couple of workshops on a trauma-informed approach, so one intro and then a follow-up workshop. We have some other workshops that are built into that on improving relationships and self-awareness, celebrating success, a concept that we call resilient listening, and on mindfulness and relationships. So the point of this, or kind of the goal of this, is to be able to have, slide just jumped forward on me there. So this could be a resource for school improvement plans. I know this is kind of the time of year where administrators are making their plans for next year and trying to decide with leadership teams, what are we going to do to try and improve our school, to try and improve our culture, to try and address some of these issues that we're seeing where students are disengaged, or they're having mental health challenges, emotional challenges, and what can we do to strengthen the way students feel valued and feel important, and that they feel a sense that we care about them? What can we do to help our staff to be more connected themselves and to feel a little bit more joy in their job and the work that they're doing? And at the heart of that, how can we create those sort of unconditional, those relationships that are unconditional, positive regard, right? So school improvement plans, I'm using these in team discussions, using it in staff meetings, professional development, and PLCs. So let me share with you just a little bit what it looks like, this toolkit that we have, and kind of the resources that are there. Share my screen again. So we have it's sort of a web portal. And if you think of this is similar to how we deliver our other programs. It's a toolkit that teachers will use to deliver resources to students. And it's all accessed through a web portal. They'll take the resources there and then go take them to teach and use and do in these lessons or workshops with students. In a similar sense, this is a toolkit and a resource for a leadership team or school administrators, where we have these resources that will be some of the things that we shared with you today. So some initial resources are documents about Strengthening the One Up and what it means and how it's explained, some strategies and activities, lists of things that you'll share with teachers. This document right here is the shifts in perspective. This is one that we shared with you today. We want to make sure that some of these things you have a takeaway today. So we're going to share this one with you. We also have, going back, we have this whole series of workshops that are pre-built workshops. So to be able to take this and do an initial workshop where we're introducing this concept of Strengthening the One Up relationship with our staff and with our team, and then having a series of follow-up workshops so that it isn't just a one and done. You know, truly for this to be effective, it has to be something that can be repeated, and that it's not just the same thing over and over. It's different aspects of what this looks like and what it feels like and how it can be done more effectively. And you know, moments that maybe help us to have, like using the Johari window, times where we get to self-reflect and understand, you know, what can we do? So these are all the different workshops that are kind of ready-made and pre-built. Some of them here are still a work in progress for us. And so this is the nice thing about having electronic access to something. We're always adding to and building and creating more resources. So this is something that can be continued. And I think, you know, for us, the goal here, like Corey said, is to try and make this logged me out. Try and make this the resource that simplifies things for us and provides sort of a tool when we are short for time, but it's also something that hopefully we can use with a team approach, so that when someone changes position or leaves or goes to another school or organization, it doesn't sort of fizzle or fall apart, that you have a sustainable model that continues to encourage this and push it and move it forward. So we get those school environments and school cultures that are sustainable. And that I think is probably the biggest challenge that we have. So the toolkit here is just something that we wanted to share what it is and help make you aware of it. If you are in this webinar today and you are, like Jason, a school psychologist or a counselor or a teacher or a paraprofessional or someone working in schools, and it's not your position to be a formal leader necessarily, but you might be one of those informal leaders, someone that influences. We would love to have you share this with your administration, and we would love to try and get them on a demo so they can see what this is and see if this is something that would be useful to them in your school. You can be an influence. If you are an administrator or you're a person that would be wanting to organize that in a more formal sense, we would love to do a demonstration with you and kind of talk about how we could get this into your schools. And so I know this is a lot of stuff to share, and we want you to be walking away with something today. So Jason's going to share I'll stop my share here. Jason's going to share a slide that has a QR code. If you'll fill out this survey for us, just to give us a little bit more information about our webinars and about some of these resources that we have, we would love to hear from you. And anyone that fills out that survey, we will share with you some of the documents and slides that we shared in this webinar today, that you can take and actually have something practical to take back and put into practice. And then hopefully it gives us an opportunity to share more about what this can be done on a larger scale for your school and have it be repeatable. Anyway, that's all. Jason, back to you.
Wow. Thank you, Hans. Thank you, Corey. Great job. Appreciate that. Either of you have any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
I do not.
All right.
Carissa
Well,
did have a question. She said, "Will all of the information be emailed to us?" A couple of things. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll provide a resource for you to be able to share this and have access to the video recording of this. So anything that you saw in here, you can share that way. We also will, we will email you, we'll send you an email basically in response tomorrow that will have the link to the webinar for everyone that's registered, and those that fill out that survey on the QR code. We will send you links to all the resources that we're promising you here in this webinar. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. One other thing, Hans, I don't know if you noticed or not, you may not have even seen it on yours, but there was that kind of gray box issue was popping up during some of your lists. A couple of people asked about those bullet points. If somebody wants those,
I'll share all of my slides for sure.
Perfect. That's what I was going to ask. And then if you'll stick around for just about 3 minutes, I'll grab the link to that survey and throw it in the chat here in case any of you are having trouble with that QR code. But the survey is located, if you point your camera at that QR code that's up right now, that will take you to the page that has the survey in it as well. Hey, want to thank everybody for showing up today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate and admire the positive comments and just the general energy in the chat, and want to thank you for bringing your vulnerability too. I was really struck by several of your comments. You shared some really important insights. Several of you shared some of your own personal experiences, which always takes a certain amount of bravery as well. And just want to thank you. Also want to thank you just for being awesome and being a constant source of inspiration for all of us. The three of us kind of represent the core part of our training team. And we regularly, after being out on the road with people, come back, and our comment is kind of universal from the three of us about how much inspiration we take from being with all of you. It's one of the great blessings in my life. And so thank you for doing that. Thank you for being awesome. Hopefully this has been some exciting and helpful and insightful stuff for you that you can take back and start some important conversations with your staff and your leadership team, as well as some strategies for you to go out and work with these kiddos that you're working with. You're making a difference in their lives. I promise you are. I know you are. Thanks for doing this, and keep your eyes peeled on your email. We will send out information on our upcoming webinars. We've got some exciting topics and guests coming up. So with that, go have a great afternoon, everybody. I'm going to play us out with some music,